Hey guys, today I want to talk to you about choosing the perfect place for you to retire and choosing the right country. You know, if you're going to leave your home country and you're going to become an expat and you're going to go out into the world and try and find a new home in a different country, and I'm only going to address Southeast Asia. I know there's plenty of good places to retire as an expat. Mexico is number one on the list, Costa Rica, many countries, Belize in South America, Central America, but I'm going to concentrate on Southeast Asia because that's where I'm at. And guys, I'm going to take out dating out of the equation. I'm going to take out looking for girls. Let's just talk about living. And in Southeast Asia, I can only think of 7 places to choose to call home. And we're going to talk about these countries. And they include Malaysia. You can live in Thailand, you can live in Vietnam, you can live in Laos, Indonesia, Philippines, Cambodia. Many places you can live here in Southeast Asia. And I'm just going to go through the list of different things that I would look at, boxes I would check if I wanted to live in a foreign country. And let's see how they compare. I think there's a standout winner at the end of this video, but let me know what you think. Before I came to the Philippines, I didn't have the luxury to be able to travel all over the place. You know, I was pretty restricted to just choosing the Philippines. One, I was married to a Filipina, and we traveled here in 2001 to 2003. We traveled to the Philippines, visiting her family, and I did like the country. I enjoyed being here very much. So I was always zeroed in on the Philippines. I did have a backup. And it's because of YouTube, me watching different bloggers as they went places, and especially a shout out to Rick Hay, because it was his video on his time in Vietnam. Vietnam was number 2 on my list of somewhere I would have liked to live. I found Vietnam to be very inexpensive, great cost of living, infrastructure was good, it was clean. Many negatives though to going to Vietnam. But let's talk about some of the main concerns. I always think, and I want you guys to tell me in the comments section if you agree with these. And I'm relying on people who have been to these countries to tell me if I'm right or wrong, or things to look for in the comments section that I haven't really looked for. The first is you have to have a country that is safe and secure. Now, most of these countries in Southeast Asia are about the same in safety and security. The countries like Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines, they have a big problem, is mostly with petty theft. Any country in the world, any city in the world, you can find trouble and trouble can find you. You have to use your street smarts. You have to be proactive on your safety. Try not to get yourself into situations. You know, don't be walking around the red light districts totally bombed out of your mind. You know, being drunk, being stupid, flashing money. You know, we all know the warning signs. But safety and security, in the countries I mentioned, petty theft is big. You know, if you leave your laptop out, you leave your cell phone on the table and get up, if you're carelessly, you know, handling your backpack, you're putting it down, not keeping a good eye on it, lots of crimes of opportunity. I don't really see a lot of people getting guns put in their face, robbed, shot. Even though things do happen, the vast majority is petty crimes, and mostly for belongings and cash. Now in countries like Indonesia, Laos, and Cambodia, the country's a little bit more dangerous, a little bit more poverty stricken. In Indonesia, if you're around Bali or Jakarta, those are major towns, major tourist towns. I think you're a little bit more safe from any kind of bad robberies or any kind of severe crime. But then again, the petty crime in tourist areas is high. And also in the countries I mentioned, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines and such, petty crimes in the big cities, pickpockets, you know, crimes of opportunity where they're going to try and snatch your bag if you leave your laptop out or you leave your cell phone out, happen more likely in the bigger cities. Now let's talk about cost of living. Now the cost of living is different in every country, but we can sort of compare these 7 different countries here. Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines, I think are the highest cost of living among these 7 countries. Right under them is going to be Vietnam and Indonesia, which is a little less costly. You can get by on a little bit less, get a little bit better bang for your buck. Laos and Cambodia are probably the 2 lowest on cost of living. This is somewhere you're going to live on a very cheap budget. You're going to want to be very provincial type living in Cambodia and Laos. The infrastructure is not that great. So rating them by cost of living from the cheapest to the most expensive, I'm going to go with Laos and Cambodia tied at the bottom. And then I'm going to have Vietnam and Indonesia about the same. Vietnam is probably a better choice of the 2. And then after that would be Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand, which probably has just about the same cost of living. Certain items are going to cost more than others, but as a whole, if your budget is $1,500 or $2,000 a month, I think you can survive in any of these countries. The higher your budget, the better your life can be. As for quality of life, I think you get a better quality of life in Malaysia. As we go down the list, I'm going to think Vietnam and Thailand are the next 2 for quality of life. You know, the infrastructure is better, the transportation's better, you know, public transportation, roadways. Next would become the Philippines and Indonesia, about tied with the quality of life that you receive in both of those countries. Especially Indonesia, we're always talking about the major cities, Bali and Jakarta. Down at the bottom of the list is going to be Laos and Cambodia. Laos and Cambodia, quality of life, public transportation's not something that's really high on the list there of good things. You can get good food, you can live a peaceful life. The types of places you can rent, places you can live are going to be limited. Some older buildings and some newer buildings. There's a construction going on. But as for an overall peace of life, enjoyable life, I'm going to put Laos and Cambodia again at the bottom of the list. And they're basically at the bottom of every list. I think Malaysia will offer you the best quality of life with the language that they speak there, the modern facilities, the hospitals, public and private, are much better than that, say, of Indonesia and the Philippines, maybe a little bit higher than Thailand itself. The cost of medical differentiates in each country and each city. And Vietnam is Vietnam. Vietnam is a newly built country after the, as they call it in Vietnam, the American War. We call it the Vietnam War. You know, the country has been totally rebuilt. So the quality of life there is simple. It's a peaceful quality of life. The only drawback to Vietnam is it is a communist country. So they're not at the top of my list, even though many people consider you'll have the best quality of life in Vietnam. I think you're going to get it in Malaysia, and then Thailand would be second. Next, let's talk about infrastructure. Now this is going to be the roadways, your internet, utilities. How's the country built? Is it going to be nice for you to live there, public transportation and such? At the top of the list again will be Malaysia and Thailand. They have the most developed infrastructure. You know, their roadways are good. They have good public transportation. They have a lot of great places to live. Chiang Mai in Thailand. Malaysia is just, I've heard nothing but good things about Malaysia. All these countries, even though I haven't visited every one of them, or any of them as a matter of fact, other than the Philippines, I've talked to many people. I've talked to people who have lived in all the countries that I've listed, and people who have lived in a couple of them. Recent trip up to Cebu, I met gentlemen who've lived in Laos and Cambodia. I met people who've lived in Vietnam. I met somebody who just came back from Malaysia and can't wait to get back to Malaysia. And of course, there's tons of guys here to talk to about Thailand and Vietnam. But as for, you know, if you want to be a digital nomad, the 2 top countries to go to would be Malaysia and Thailand. You're going to get, the infrastructure is good, always improving. Both have good public hospitals, private hospitals, affordable hospitals. Next would be Vietnam and Indonesia, which are both vastly improving the infrastructure. They're spending a lot of money in development of the roadways, the public transportation system, you know, their internet, the power supply, the grid. A lot of improvements being done in both those countries. And as for infrastructure, something that you need on an everyday basis, and especially if you're a digital nomad, you're a traveler, and you want to, partake in a good quality of life. Indonesia and Vietnam are improving on their infrastructure. Next would become the Philippines, and the best way to describe the Philippines is uneven. The infrastructure in some areas of the country is good roadways, good public transportation. In other areas of the country, there is no public transportation. The internet is terrible, as many of you know, rolling blackouts. The Philippines has a long way to go to improve their infrastructure. It's a project, and it's something they're doing on a daily basis here with the government and public works. But as of right now, there are 4 countries that have much better infrastructure than the Philippines, and that is Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. The 2 worst, again, Laos and Cambodia, 2 places where, for me, it's hard to imagine anybody who really wants to live in either one of those countries, but they have the worst infrastructure. Cambodia, I don't even know if they have public transportation. Older buildings, very low cost of living, though, is the positive thing you can say about both Laos and Cambodia. Now we'll take into consideration now rental property. We all have to live somewhere. The best options for renting are Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam. All 3 countries have a wide variety of rentals, from beach to rural areas, a wide range of different prices, quality of the places you can rent. It could be a top-notch condo, or it could be a low-level apartment. But all 3 have many places to rent. The market is booming in all 3 countries for rental. You'll easily find a place to rent in all 3 of those countries. As we know, the Philippines is also a wide range of places to rent, being that if you're in Manila or Cebu, or a top tourist destination, or a top expat destination such as Panglao, Dumaguete, the rents are going to be higher. But you can find cheap rent in the province, as they say, in the rural areas, in the smaller cities. The quality of the place you rent in all 4 of these countries will depend on the price you pay. The more you pay, the better the quality, more of a Western style. But Malaysia and Vietnam, they have a lot of modern condos, a lot of modern places to rent, great community development. They'll have condos in an area that has plenty of markets, shopping, roadways with public transportation. Easy to find good rentals in all those places. Indonesia also offers a lot of luxury condos in the main city, in Bali. So a good range of places to find to rent. Indonesia, in the distinct tourist areas, are very expensive. A lot of luxury condos and apartments you can have, newly built. Laos is going to be harder to find a good place to rent. It's an older market. They don't have a lot of new construction there. Language is going to become a barrier and could be hard for you to rent a place based on the language barriers there. Cambodia has a lot of new construction going on. So you're going to be able to find a wide variety of different places to rent in Cambodia. But also Cambodia has a lot of older places to rent. And be careful in renting, do your due diligence in any of these countries when you rent. Inspect the property. Don't rent the first place you see. Check around. Get an idea of what the market is. Talk to other expats if you can run into other expats. Get a great idea of what you can find for rent and the cost. Here I want to talk about owning land. And the only reason I bring this up, it seems like in almost every video I do about cost of living, living in the Philippines or anything, someone always brings up, I would never live in a country where I couldn't own the property. I couldn't own the land where I built my house. Now in every one of these countries, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, Laos, Cambodia, you cannot own land. There are restrictions to foreigners owning land. In some of these countries, you cannot even own the ground floor of a condo building. That you have, if you buy a condo, you have to buy above the ground floor. But Philippines is not the only country that does not allow you to own land. Now you can own land in Japan, and you can own land and buy land in South Korea. But those prices are similar to US prices. So moving out retiring in a foreign country, thinking of saving money, and you want to build your own house, there's always a way to do it somehow. Maybe it's a little illegal, maybe a little shady, or there's loopholes in the laws, but get a good attorney. My recommendation is not to buy land in any of these countries, but if you do, make sure you understand the laws, make sure you know what you're doing. I will address any questions about the Philippines because I understand their laws a little bit better than any other country. But everybody's always saying, I don't want to live in a country where I cannot own land. Well, none of these here except Malaysia. Now, Malaysia, you can own property in Malaysia. Owning property in Malaysia, there's a lot of restrictions. You can do it. I believe you got to have the Make Malaysia My Second Home visa. You know, you have to become a permanent resident of Malaysia. Also, there's a minimum purchase requirement, stopping foreigners from going around buying all the cheap land. They put a certain minimum that you can pay for a property. So you're going to pay more than the property's worth. It's sort of their way to restrict things, and they have to approve any purchases that you do. If anybody out there has bought property in Malaysia or any of these countries, Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Indonesia, let me know. Let me know how hard it was for you. Send me an email or leave a comment below. So let's talk about, you know, you need to have a visa to arrive in the country. A lot of these countries all offer, you know, a tourist visa upon arrival. The two easiest, of course, are Malaysia and the Philippines. They have the longest stay duration, and they're the easiest. You enter the country, you show your passport. Being that you're from the US, UK, Canada, many countries are giving a tourist visa upon arrival. Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos also have the ease of, you can get a tourist visa upon arrival. Now, their extension is a little bit harder than it is for Malaysia and the Philippines, but it's still an easy process. It just takes a little bit more planning for the extension visa there. More restricted would be Laos and Vietnam. Laos and Vietnam, you have to do a little bit of planning before getting your visa. You have to do an electronic visa ahead of time. And again, those two are a little bit more restrictive, but all the countries seem to have an ease of visa entry. I'm going to always push the Philippines because I think the Philippines visa process is the easiest. I think their long-term residential visa, the SRRV, is simple and easy to process and get done. The restrictions and requirements are less than anybody else. Malaysia has a very good long-term visa. It's called Make Malaysia My Second Home visa process. Thailand, there's a financial requirements. A lot of these countries have big financial requirements. You have to have a certain amount of money in the bank or show that you have a certain amount of earnings. I believe the Philippines is the least expensive with the amount of earnings you have to show to get a permanent residence visa. That could be $800 or $1,000 US a month. And in some cases, you don't even have to show the earnings. You just put a larger deposit in the bank. So as we get older, we need our health care. And Malaysia and Thailand offer the best hospitals. You know, the best public hospitals and also the best private hospitals. Now, the private hospitals can get costly. They're more expensive, but they are far less expensive than what we're used to paying for in the West. Next in line is going to be Vietnam, probably followed by Indonesia, and then the Philippines. All three of these have good health care, good hospitals, more in the big cities than out in the rural areas, but they do have good health care. All three countries you can get international health care insurance at a good price. I'm going to think Vietnam is a little bit ahead of the other two countries, but Indonesia is improving constantly in their health care. And the Philippines is still trying to improve, but again, basically in the major cities is the best health care for people in the Philippines. That's going to be Davao, Iloilo, Cebu, and Manila. If you're living in the province area, which is the same for most countries, the health care might become inadequate. Laos and Cambodia have a long way to go to get their health care on a par level of just the Philippines, let alone be at the same level as Thailand or Malaysia. Both these countries, Laos and Cambodia, if you're out of the main city, finding a doctor is going to be hard. Finding a hospital is going to be hard. Public hospitals, maybe the small clinics you'll find in the rural areas. Same thing here in the Philippines. Farther you are away from a main city, the farther you get from healthcare. And Laos and Cambodia, I'm going to put them down at the bottom as healthcare. Philippines, not that much farther above. They are much better than Laos and Cambodia, but they are a step below Vietnam and Indonesia in healthcare. You got to make sure where you're living, there's not a language barrier. There's, you know, it has to be a cultural fit for you. You have to enjoy the country, you have to enjoy the people, and you have to be able to communicate. Now the top two, of course, Malaysia and the Philippines. English is their main language, and most people do speak that. Now when you're in Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia, if you're in the main cities, you're in the tourist areas, you're in a restaurant, you're in a store, chances are you're going to find people to speak English. I don't think it's going to be such a thing of difficulty to communicate with people if you're in a store, in a tourist spot, in a restaurant. But you know, you never know, especially in Vietnam, in the big cities, in the nicer restaurants, of course. But if you go out of town a little bit, in a little bit more provincial area, more rural area, people speaking English might become difficult for you to find. And learning these languages, trying to learn Thai and learn Vietnamese, and you know, to speak to people in Cambodia and Laos, it's going to be hard for you to learn, especially if you're older, as an older person. So if talking to somebody, which I do, I love talking to people, that's why I'm on YouTube, I would have to pick Malaysia or the Philippines as a place to live, because I like to talk to people. And your other alternative, talking to the locals, is going to be talking to your expat community. I wanted to touch on banking, but the one thing about banking that I found with all the countries, and they're all the same, it's going to be hard to open a bank account in any of these countries if you're just on a tourist visa. Now, if you become a permanent resident, it's going to be easier to open up bank accounts. But to just walk in on a tourist visa, show the people your ID, your passport, and open a bank account, all the countries we're talking about have strict requirements in opening up a bank account. Now, you never know what's going to happen and what manager you talk to or friends you make, but I think you shouldn't be planning on making bank accounts when you're still on your tourist visa. Getting money from the U.S. over to these countries, that's a different story. When you're in a major tourist area, one of the major capital cities, the big cities, it's going to be easy to transfer money through Wise, World Remit, wire transfers to yourself, Western Union and such, cash pickups. Guys, I know all you guys who live in Thailand and Indonesia and Malaysia, let me know how you transfer your money there. Is it the same as we do here in the Philippines? Transferring money should not become a problem if you're on a tourist visa and you are a tourist. Now, if you're planning on living there and you're going to become a full-time resident, look hard into the banking and the banking restrictions. You know, is there a minimum requirement for a deposit? Do you need residency for a certain amount of time? Do you need to have a lease or something? Do you need to have that permanent residency? Here in the Philippines, a lot of people tell me you need the ACR card to open a bank account. And I've seen people who don't have an ACR card open a bank account. So, you know, these are foreign countries, different rules, different ways of doing business. Sometimes a dollar here or a dollar there can help you get these accounts open faster. But don't plan on opening a bank account the minute you get to any of these countries. What you want to do is whoever you're using for cash transactions, your own personal bank, if you're using a Wise, a Zoom, World Remit, ask them, can I transfer money to Laos? Can I transfer money to Cambodia for cash pickups? Ask them these questions before you get on the plane and you go there. Know the answer to these questions before you leave home. Also, understand the tax situation in these countries. I do not know the tax situation for all these countries. I've heard rumors in Thailand that they're going to start taxing you on the money you bring into the country. The Philippines does not. You can bring in money and it isn't taxed. I don't know about all the other countries, but if you're going to make that country your permanent home, find out the tax laws. See what you're going to be responsible for tax-wise. Before you leave your home country, make sure you make arrangements with somebody about your taxes to your home country. In the U.S., the IRS, you're still going to have to file taxes. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but find out the truth before you leave your home country. And make sure if you need to file taxes that you learn how to do it online overseas and what forms you're going to need. The big thing is you want to make sure the country you're choosing isn't going to be taxing your money, because you're on a limited amount of money. And I'm talking to people here who are just average Joes. If you're a rich guy and you have plenty of money, plenty of disposable income, a lot of these things don't matter to you. But to the average Joe coming over here to a different country to set up his life for the future, these are things you need to look for, understand, and find the answers to before you leave. And all the videos I've done, the biggest thing people complain about or tell me is the main reason they live somewhere, and I find it hard to believe, but it's the quality of the food. Being here almost 3 years in the Philippines, I think you're right. I think you're right. The food is a big issue. Good tasting food. Top of the list for top food is Vietnam, Malaysia, and Thailand. And Malaysia is number one on this list. They have the best food, they have the best tasting food, they have the biggest variety. The markets are full of fresh fruits and vegetables, especially in Malaysia, especially in Vietnam, an abundance of fresh fruits and vegetables, high quality standards in cooking. People like to have a lot of taste in their food. Vietnam, well renowned for the coffee, the Vietnamese coffee. If you're in Vietnam, try the coffee. They tell me it's great coffee in Vietnam. Malaysia has the best food, by far. Everybody I talk to always rates, if they've been to Malaysia, Malaysia is the number one for food. Then's going to come Thailand and Indonesia. Both have good food, good tasting food, not bland, rice and chicken, a wide variety of foods. Everybody speaks highly of that. I'm going to think, from what everybody tells me, Vietnam is way up there with Malaysia, but the Philippines is down to the bottom. And the reason is, we're in Laos and Cambodia, the food is not so special as it's more local cuisine. Each country has its own taste to the food. Where here in the Philippines, it's such a diverse culture here. You have the Spanish influence, you have the American influence, you have the Philippine influence, you have the Chinese influence, Japanese. The food has gotten really simple here, but there's such a good abundance of restaurants here in the Philippines that if you're in a major city, you can get a wide variety of food. And I'm not going to put the food down, but I think the food quality is probably to the low end of this list. At the very top is Malaysia. The last thing I want to talk about is expat communities. All these countries have an expat community. Thailand and the Philippines have huge expat communities. Big blocks of Americans, of Brits, Australians, Indonesia, Malaysia, they're next in that list. Vietnam have a large Russian community that lives in Vietnam. The American community, I don't think is that big as it is the Chinese and the Russian community there. As for Laos and Cambodia, Cambodia has a big influx of Chinese, huge influx of Chinese doing new construction, infrastructure, rebuilding the country. The American expat community in Laos and Cambodia is very small, but very tight. It's a small group, but they seem to be very tight. I've gone on the expat forums and checked them out. They seem to give out good information and try and help each other. Not so much with the expat forums here in the Philippines, where it's a lot of negativity. Thailand, same way, a lot of negativity in the expat forums there. But Cambodia and Laos, for being such a small community, they seem to be tight and very helpful to each other. Where you choose to live when you retire and move out of the country, if you're going to become an expat, that is totally up to you. You have to make the determination. I just brought up some points here what to look for, in my opinion, through my research, talking to people, not my firsthand knowledge, but most people coming don't have the opportunity to visit. If you have the financial resources to travel, spend the time there, you have vacation time, you have time off from work, maybe you're semi-retired, and check them out for yourselves before you make the big move. Always come on the tourist visa to start. Check it out, short-term rentals, Airbnb, whatever you got to use. Think it through, pay for stuff in advance so you don't have to carry a lot of cash. So in the final outcome, I think Malaysia is probably the top place to live. If I was a single guy, and women are not part of the equation, there's no women in this equation, Malaysia would be number one, followed by Vietnam, then Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, Cambodia, and Laos. That's my list right there. And Malaysia sounds like a great place to live. Good infrastructure, the language. The only negative there is the religion. It's a majority Muslim country, which all these countries are different. The big advantage to a country like the Philippines, it's a Christian country, so you're used to Christmas, Easter. You'll be more comfortable in a country like the Philippines religious-wise, but different things in Malaysia. The women, some of them cover their face. They might not date a Christian man, so that's the only negative that I can find to Malaysia. So hopefully this helps you decide on where you want to live. I hope to read all these comments and guys giving me your opinion, and let me know what you think. Until next time.